Today's daf is daf Samach Vav, and we'll begin with the Mishnah on the top of the Yomi. Poschin b'Yom Tov l'Shabbos. A person took a neder that enjoined him from eating meat and drinking wine for a full year, for example, an extended period of time, and obviously included in that period of time would be Yom Tov l'Shabbos. So the Torah commands us in the mitzvah of Simcha, Ein Simcha l'Bebasa v'Yayin. And of course, on Shabbos, there's a mitzvah of Oneg Shabbos, and he has to eat and drink. So they can be posech b'Pesach. They can say to him, look, if you would have realized that you're going to be mitztayer on Shabbos and Yom Tov, and in that sense, you're going to undermine the mitzvah of Simcha, mitzvah of Oneg, would you have taken the neder? He says, no, I wouldn't have taken the neder when matir is neder. Now, the question is, once they were matir is neder vis-a-vis certain days of the year, namely Yom Tov Shabbosos, does that remove the entire neder? So Rishona, originally, before Rabbi Akiva came to the stage, we can only be matir with that Pesach those days of Yom Tov, but the balance of the days of the year will still be included under a binding Isur Neder, Shara Yomim Asur. Ad Sheba Rabbi Akiva came with a drasha, the limit, and he taught us Sheneder Shehuta Mechlolo Huta Kulo. That Neder is an all or nothing enterprise. If you're matir part of the Neder and you move it, then the entire Neder collapses. And since he's now being permitted to eat basar and drink wine during Yom Tov and Shabbosos, Mamela, the whole neder collapses and he can drink wine and eat meat the whole year round. And this drasha is based on an extra word in the pasuk in Parashas Matos, where it says kechol hayotzim mipiv yasa. Why did the Torah emphasize the word kechol, that you should observe this neder because of kol? And it means kol hayotzim mipiv, meaning only when the neder is binding in its totality, but if the neder can only be partially binding, then we have a principle of ein neder chal lichatzoyin. Okay, so the Gemara gives another example of Rabbi Akiva's principle of huta miktsasa tekulo. Amar kodim sheini nene lekulchem. He looks at a group of people and he accepts upon himself an isa from hana from the entire group. For example, let's say he didn't realize that amongst the group was his father or one of his brothers, and therefore he doesn't want the neder to be chal vis-a-vis his relatives. Is hutra kulam, he's allowed to be neder from anyone in that group. The entire neder is butter. And that's another application of Rabbi Akiva's principle of hutra miksaso, hutra kulam. Let's just review for a moment the highlights of a sugya that we learned earlier on Daf Chafei Amid Beis, Chafvav Amid Aleph, which presented a machlokes Rabba and Rava how to interpret our Mishnah. Rava, with an Aleph, is of the opinion that the din of Huter Miktsasa Tekulo applies even in a case where when you ask the noder during the period of She'ela, and he reiterates his original nusach. And he says the following, you know what? Even if I had known that my father was amongst those in that group, I would have used the same language of kulchem, but I would have added chutz mi'abba. Rava is of the opinion, against Rava, that in such a case, even Rabbi Akiva would concede that we don't apply the principle of neder shuta mitzasa to kulo. The only time we'll apply Rabbi Akiva's principle, argues Rabbah, is if he changes the entire nusach of his original neder, of his original haflas peh. And he would have said, you know, I never would have said the word kulchem, I would have said abba mutter vashar oser. So now that he's rescinding his original nusach ha-neder, his original haflah, that's when Rabbi Akiva says the original neder is butter. The Mishnah continues. Let's say he did not include all of the group in one nusach of neder, but rather he took a konam She'eni nene lozeh v'lozeh. So what does it mean? Now he says lozeh, looking at Reuven. So there's a konim that I won't enjoy any hana from Reuven. And then he looks at Shimon and he says to Shimon that your din should be equal to Reuven's din. Then he looks at Levi and he says your din should be like Shimon. And then he looks at Yisachar and he says Yisachar should be like Levi, etc., etc. So you've got a Rishon, a Sheni, a Shlishi, and each one is like the one that preceded him. If you take out the first card in the deck, then the entire deck falls apart. He was told that all of these people on the Rishon, on Reuven, because Shimon's neder is dependent, Eser is dependent upon Reuven, and Levi on Shimon, etc., etc. However, Hutar Achron, if the last one on the list, let's call him Yisachar, was Mutter, then Achron Mutter, V'kulam Asurim. The original ones, the earlier ones, are not dependent upon Yisachar. So Reuven's status and his neder, and Shimon is independent of Yisachar. And therefore the Eser remains as far as the earlier ones, and it's only from that one and on. Like the Mishnah says here at the end, again, there's a Girsa issue, but Hutar Emtsoi, Heimenu Lamata Mutar, Heimenu Lamala Asir. If the Noder says Shani Nene was Ze Carbon was Ze Carbon, he reiterates the word carbon. So he says that what I benefit from so should be like a carbon, should be also like a carbon. And then he looks at another person and he says again was Ze Carbon. So we'll see that this Mishnah reflects the Shita of Rabbi Shimon, that if you repeat an unnecessary word, you're setting up separate Nedarim. There's Trichim Pesach Echad V'Echad. By using the word carbon for each one of these individuals, Reuven, Shimon, etc., carbon lazeh, he indicates that each neder is independent, and one neder after the other would have to either stand or fall depending upon whether they could be matir b'pesach. If a man takes a neder and he declares konav yayin shani toim, I don't want to drink any wine. Why? Because yayin is ra'alei ayin, because wine is detrimental to one's digestive system. But they told him, hello, if you have an old vintage wine, it's actually healthy for your stomach. So what's the din in this case? We're going to apply the principle of Rabbi Akiva, that since now through the She'elas Chacham, we determined that he didn't really want to take an neder on the Yushan, because that's really healthy for his stomach, then he's mutter on yain. However, it seems to me that the interpretation here is a little bit different. Although the Mishnah used the word hutar, which sounds like we're dealing with Hataras Chacham, I believe that in this case, we're talking about something else. We're talking about toes. He was unaware of the health value, the positive value of Miyushan, and therefore he never would have taken the neder on Yayin Miyushan. And once we remove the neder on Yayin Miyushan, we did toes, and we don't even need a Heter Chacham, then the entire neder falls apart according to Rabbi Akiva. Kono Batzal Shani Toim. So too, if a man says, I don't want to enjoy any benefits from onions because abatzol ra lev, it's very detrimental for the health of the heart. But amullah lo kufri, we have a batzal that comes from the villages, and it's grown in such a way and it has those nutrients sheyofel lev. It is actually beneficial for the heart. Huta bekufri, v'lo kufri bilvad ela huta bechol habitzolim. Once again, we're matir the entire neder because of hutar miksaso, hutar kulam. Maisa Haya, a story took place where a person enjoyed himself from all categories of onions because he said they were ralaway. He tiro Rabbi Meir b'cholam etzolim, And after they determine that there's a Batzal called a Batzal Kufri that comes from the villages, and that's beneficial for his health, then we apply the principle of Huta Miktaso to Kulo like Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara says the following: we learned in our Mishnah Huta Achron Achron Muta V'Kulo Masurin, that if he makes Yisachar depends on Yehuda on Levi, Levi on Shimon, and Shimon on Reuven, then if he was matir only Yisachar, then all the rest of the group remain awesome. But then the Mishnah says that if he says Sha'ani Nene Lozeh Karban or Lozeh Karban, then since he reiterates the word Karban in each Neder vis-a-vis another individual, we need a Pesach for each one of the Nedarim. But let's say he would have used a different language, and he would have said Karban Lozeh V'Lozeh without repeating the word Karban, then it's one indivisible neder, and if we were matir part of that neder, the entire neder falls apart. Mantana, to which in a machlokes in the Masechet Shavuos Lamed Vav and Beis between Rav Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda, to which Tana can we attribute our Mishnah? Amar Rav Rabbi Shimon. It's against Rabbi Yehuda. Our Mishnah reflects the shita of Rabbi Shimon, the Amar. And what did Rabbi Shimon say? There were 5 people that each one claimed that he had been mafkid in the hands of Reuven a certain object. So Reuven was the shomer in whose hands a whole bunch of people are claiming they deposited their objects. And now the nitba, who's the defendant, is now being demanded a shvua by each one of the claimants, each one of the plaintiffs. Okay, each one is demanding a shvua to say that he, take a shvua that he doesn't have the pikadon, he never got the pikadon. So he takes a shvua for each one of these 5. What did he say? If he said to the first one, shvua she'ein lecha etzli pikadon, and then he turns to the second one, he says, lo lecha, without the vav, he just says lo lecha, and then he turns to the third and he says lo lecha, the fourth and the fifth. Now the question is, if it turns out that he took what's called a shvua sheker, and in truth he is holding on to the pikadon that's stashed away in his attic, so the halacha is based on the 5th chapter of Vayikra, v'kichesh ba'amito v'pikadon v'nishbal sheker v'sashomo yavilo, that he's chayav what's called a karban hasham gzelos, because he took a false oath to support his claim, denying his obligation to pay. And since he said shvua lo lecha, that's enough to integrate all the shvuos into one shvuah. And Rabbi Shimon argues in that case where he says lo lecha, lo lecha, lo lecha, he will only bring one karban asham, one single asham for one single neder. And this is against the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says the following, that if Rabbi Shimon's principle is correct, that when a person, the nitfa, says to the Tovei Harishon, Shvua ein lecha b'yadi, then even if he would say lo lecha or v'lo lecha with a vav, and he turns to, let's say, Shimon the Sheni and then to Levi the Shlishi, he says v'lo lecha, v'lo lecha, v'lo lecha to each one of these things. So he adds the word vav, and he says v'lo to each one of them. Then Rabbi Yehuda says, Nechshav ki'ilu nishbach chamesh shvuos nifrados. The vav is what we call a vav hamachalik, and it separates the shvua that he took to Reuven from the shvua that he took to Shimon and to Levi, etc., etc. And therefore, he's going to have to bring 5 hashalos, according to Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda makes that distinction between the case of lolacha and vilolacha. The vav is a vav hamachalik. When he adds the vav, he's saying vi, I'm taking another shvua, licha. And then there are 5 separate shvuos that generate 5 separate karbonos of Hasham Gzelos. Rabbi Shimon says, no, there's only one shvuah. Ad sheyomar shvuah l'kol echad ve'echad. When does Rabbi Shimon recognize that there are separate independent shvuos, that each would generate its own a carbon asham, if he took a false oath? That's if he reiterates the word shvuah one time after the other. And it's not enough that he says ulacha, ulacha, to separate with a vav ha-machalik. No. Because even if it's a vav ha-machalik, but he didn't enunciate a new shvuah, so he only said the word shvuah once to Reuven, the first tovea, when he said shvuah she'ein lecha pikadon biyadi, but he never reiterated the word shvuah. Only if he reiterates when he gets to Shimon and then to Levi the word shvuah, that sets it up as an independent shvuah, and he has to bring a korban on each one of them. Our Mishnah Nedarim that says, if he says shani nene lazeh korban ulazeh korban, only then do we say that each one of the Nedarim needs its own Pesach. But if he would have said lazeh ulazeh, then it would be one neder and huter miksaso, huter kulo. That reflects the shita of Rabbi Shimon, that until he adds the word korban, he's not taking a new neder. And the same thing is true in Shvuah, where according to Rabbi Shimon, until he reiterates the word Shvuah, it's all one Shvuah. The Mishnah says, Konam Yayin. Now let's emphasize the word Yayin, Shani Torah. And he says, because Yayin is not going to be good for my digestive system. And they point out to him that Yayin Miyushan, if it's old vintage wine, it's actually beneficial for the stomach. And the Mishnah says that now that it becomes clear to the Noder that Yayin Miyushan is Yafa Lemei Ayin, therefore it's mutter. So the question is obvious. When he formulated his konam, he said because Yayin is Ra Lamei Ayin. Now between Ra and Yafa, there are many gradations in the middle. So if we would have told him that Yayin Miyushan is not Ra, it's not detrimental, it's parva. Come see, come saw. It's not positive, it's not negative. That should enough be matter is negative and typically be ein ra. Why don't we just say to him ein ra? Why does the Mishnah say no? We have to convince him that it's yafel ameyayin. It's something that will help his digestive system. Omer Rabbi Abba, that's not how you read the Mishnah, but rather the yafek tani. It means not only if we clarify that it's not evil for the stomach, which would be enough to be matter the negative, but even more than that, we told him you should know al pi emes yayin miyushan is yafel ameyayin. And for sure the neder is mutter. But the neder would be mutter even if we told him that it's not ra l'meyayin. Kona batzal shani toim shabatzal. Typically bein ra, once again, Rabbi Abba v'od yofek toim. And this leads us to the Mishnah here on Daf Samach Vav, the second Mishnah on the Daf. Poschim li'oda b'chod atzmo b'chod bona. What's the case? A man takes a neder in joining himself from hana, from any benefit from his wife. The halacha is in such a case, once that neder is chal, he has to divorce his wife. So what we want to do is tell him that, you know what, you're being pogea in your own kavod, and certainly in the kavod of your children. How do we say that to him? Tomorrow they're going to say, this man divorces his wife just flippantly. Stay away from this man. He's regilus legareshes nosha. And as far as his children is concerned, he's going to have a negative impact on his children because people are going to begin to ask, why is he divorcing his wife? Apparently, she didn't behave properly. she was guilty of some immoral behavior that was suspect. And you almost bonos crucials. Hey, you know what? Maybe his daughters inherited those same qualities. It's not kedai to get near them and marry them off because they also will live an immoral life like their mother. Marasa, Iman Shal Elu's garish, because why did this man divorce the mother of this girl? He must have divorced her and he refused to continue living with her because he found a Dover Ereva. That's why he was motivated to divorce her. Who wants to marry the daughter of a mother who's guilty and suspect of violating Dvarim Sheba'ereva? And he responds, the Noder Ilo Isio Deakain, if only I would have realized the long-term repercussions of my neder, how it's going to affect my reputation in an ill way, and how it's going to affect the reputation of my daughters. Lo Yisi Noder, I wouldn't have taken the neder, Reizah Mutter. Konam Shani Nosei Es Klonis, he takes a neder that he will not marry so-and-so, and why? He tells you exactly why. And he's mistaken, but he tells you, Ki'ura, she's ugly. Parei Hina, as it turns out, she's beautiful. We had this Mishnah earlier. Shchora, she's black. Parei Levana, Ktsara, she's short. Parei Arucha, she's tall. Mutava, he's allowed to marry her, and the neder is not kal. Lomit Shehi Ki'ura, not because she was actually ugly at the time that he took the neder. Now she prettied herself up. She went to a cosmetician, or she was black and nasa lefana ktsara v'nasa sarucha. That's already what we call nolad. That's already a situation that arose or arises subsequent to the shasa neder. That we're not going to be matir. Ella shaneder v'tos. We're talking about a case where at the time of the neder she was already no. Levana Arucha. He was not aware of that, so his whole neder was predicated on a mistaken assumption. And such a neder, which is nidrig toes, eno tzricha atori, doesn't mean you have to be mad. But now the Gemara is going to tell, the Mishnah is going to tell us a story which seems to contradict what we just learned. Ma'isa v'yechad shenodar ribas achoso hanoya. Right, she was an ugly woman. And the uncle, took a neder and he wouldn't have any anah from his niece. They brought it to Rabbi Yishmael, and Rabbi Yishmael would oversee that they would do everything possible to make her beautiful. We'll see that she had lost the tooth, and he would find a dentist, an expert who would replace the tooth with a fake tooth. And as a result of Rabbi Yishmael's change in her complexion, in her beauty, then Rabbi Yishmael was able to be matir and neder. Lo, Rabbi Yishmael said to the uncle who had taken the neder, B'ni, my son, Misuna Darta, take a look at her. She looks great. I wouldn't have taken a neder if I would have known how beautiful she could become. B'tirua, Rabbi Yishmael, now please take note that this is a case of Nolan, because Rabbi Yishmael beautified her after the neder was taken. He also showed that time Rabbi Yishmael saw that you could take a girl of Israel who looks chas v'shalom ugly and make her so beautiful. Bacha Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael cried out, "Look what poverty can do to the people of Israel." Israel knows, and basically Jewish girls are beautiful. If you'd only remove all the darkness of poverty, El Shanius min Avos Asam, it's Anius, the poverty is really the cause, the result of which they become ugly. Ukshebeis Rabbi Yishmael, who did so much for the Bnos Yisrael, his heart went out for them. Then how you Bnos Yisrael nosos kino miomros, the Mekonanos at the funeral of Rabbi Yishmael cried out, B'nos Yisrael, Al Rabbi Yishmael Bechena, cry over the loss, wail together with me over the loss of Rabbi Yishmael. Who is this Rabbi Shmuel? He was the person who was so tired, he was so bitzar that we were poverty stricken. And not only that, he was concerned to make sure that we would have beautiful clothing. The Chenu Omer, the Shaul, you find something very similar to Shaul. Bnos Yisrael, Al Shol B'chena. The Mekonos cried out, let's wail together over the loss of Shaul HaMelech because Hamal Bishchem. And the Pasuk says, Shoni im Adonim Amala Adizov Alavushchem. This is the Pasuk in Shmuel Beis. And this is the hesped of David HaMelech for Shaul after Shaul's death. The Omar Allah, Shebeshasha Yubaleim Shel Bnos Yisrael Yotzes Milchama. Shaul, when he sent out the troops, and married men would go out to the front lines, and their wives would remain without a husband for long periods of time to support them. Shaul HaMelech Hayu Hayazon Es Nishoseyem Ufarnes Alamal Bishem Shani Imandoni. Shaul made sure to finance and support these women whose husbands were out in the front lines. And he gave them clothes. And what kind of clothes did he give them? Rashi learns big day tziv'onim, colored clothes. Mitzvah Siyam says Shani is Tolash Shani, which is Tzemer Tzavua Adom. And Rashi says Adonim is Kol Ma Shemefanik, anything that sort of beautifies you. Machalim Tovim, Malbushim Pe'er, that's called Eden, or in the plural Adonim. V'yiteim Adonim l'nafshecha, Shlomo Melech says in Mishlei. But the Radak says that Adonim is a reference specifically to Begadim, because a beautiful garment is Ma'adein Haguf, like Machal Atov. So you see that Rabbi Shmuel would reach out. So the Gemara immediately asked Maisa Listar. We just finished saying that we're not Posech Nolad, only if she was actually beautiful and he didn't realize it at the time that he took the neder. And now you're telling me Rabbi Shmuel would beautify the woman even after the neder. Rabbi Shmuel Omer Afilu. And so I disagree with the Chachamim. I hold that even in a case where she wasn't so beautiful at the time of the neder, Ke'ura, but nasis no, shchora nasis, katzor nasis aruka. Even in all these cases, we can poseach with a Pesach on a Nolad. And even though this Nolad is called a Nolad she'eno shachiach, we discussed yesterday that there are two categories of Nolad. There's something shachiach that we anticipate, something that we don't expect, and that's called the eno shachiach. Rabbi Shmuel holds that even in a case, says the Ran, of a Nolad she'eno shachiach, we don't even anticipate it, nevertheless, we can be poseach bin Nolad. So therefore, the Ran is suggesting that there's a machlokas between the Chacham Rabbi Shmuel about whether we're poseach bin Nolad. The Rosh, on the other hand, says that Rabbi Shmuel holds that since we can beautify her, she was really never ugly to begin with. The ugliness was only a covering on the outside. We have to remove the filth and expose her natural beauty. And therefore, in this case, it's a neder tos. It doesn't even require a Torah's chacham on Pesach. Maisa b'echad shenodar mibasachoso v'chnisua lebeis Rabbi Shmuel v'ipur. Rabbi Shmuel beautified this niece, and then he said to the uncle, would you have taken this neder if you had seen how we can beautify her? And now we're going to turn to Amid Beis.